Coming to you from the mountains and the plain, the only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. As always, my name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Otto.
And today we're going to follow up on what we've talked about in the past because we warned it, the President of the United States warned it, that if you give even an inch to the leftist protesters demanding that you take down Civil War statues, if you give even an inch, they will take a mile. Throughout history, we've seen that when you appease tyrants, when you appease radicals, they don't stop, they just double down. They take your appeasement as weakness.
And where did it start,
demand
Max?
more and more.
Where did it start?
This is all straight out of the Middle East. They're calling these radicals the woke Taliban.
This is exactly what it is. This is foreign actors. We are letting foreign actors, people that have been here less than a generation or that are literally coming out trying to destroy everything we stand for as a country. They're foreign acters. They did it in the Middle East.
A lot of them wish that they were. A lot of them do wish that they were.
No, listen. The fundamentals under this, the underbelly of how this all got started was started by foreign actors. They participated in it. Right? This is all hey, we did it in the Middle East. We tore down everything that had any historical meaning. I mean, they took down everything, including wanted to take down pyramids. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, no, they've taken down Buddhist temples in the Middle East, Hindu temples, Zoroastrian temples, pretty much anything that isn't an Islamic shrine. You saw ISIS, you saw the Taliban, they were destroying it. In the United States, that's what they're trying to do, not necessarily with religious symbols, though I did wake up this morning to Jesus statues trending. So if you want to look at where they're going next, that's the next step.
This is an attack on everything we represent as a country. This is an attack. By the way,
it absolutely is.
Can we stop here for a minute? We have a bunch of people that are on the page. I just want to tell you guys right now to please share, right? So Facebook is throttling us. They do a really good job of throttling anything they don't agree with. These radicals actually work for companies that, weaponize technology. So share. Hit the share button. Share button. If you're on one of the other pages that's actually shared it, just go ahead and click on it. It'll actually pop it up. It'll put it in the bar as far as a URL, and then take that and just share it on your page directly.
And in our description share. In our description on Facebook and YouTube, we have a bunch of different links that you can use to subscribe, to listen to the podcast, watch the podcast in other ways. So definitely make sure you check those out. I want to go through today with what we've seen over the past week, because we've seen that slippery slope. To say that leftists are going after the founding fathers now is not a slippery slope argument, because we're already on our way down the slide. This was the warning back in 2017 that Trump made and many conservatives made, and they were ridiculed for it. I want to play this clip, and I gotta say viewer discretion advised, because John Oliver is the guy in the clip, and he uses some inappropriate language, but that's a leftist for you. So I want to play this clip of John Oliver making fun of Trump for warning that it'd be a slippery slope to give in to the demands to take down Confederate statues. Let's play cut one.
The president's concern seems to be that tearing down statues leads to a slippery slope.
This week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week, and is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Okay, well, I'll tell you where it stops. Somewhere. Anytime someone asks, where does it stop, the answer is always fucking somewhere. You might let your kid have Twizzlers, but not inject black tar heroin. You don't just go, well, after the Twizzlers, where does it stop?
So he was ridiculed for it. Yeah, very dumb. But I played that clip not to elevate him, but to show how ridiculously foolish that argument was. Because over the last week, we've seen the transition from targeting Civil War statues, Confederate statues and monuments, to now going after the founding fathers. And I want to throw this image up. Let's throw up image number 2. This is Mount Rushmore. If you see, they're not going out to Mount Rushmore yet, but every single, as we'll get to during this episode, every single president on there is now being targeted by the left. Not necessarily to be removed from Mount Rushmore, but to have their other statues removed in other areas of the country. And it seems ridiculous.
What did I say before? These are anti-Americans.
Yeah, it seems ridiculous they'd be going after Teddy Roosevelt or Abraham Lincoln, but they are. We're going to be playing clips showing just how stupid and radical the left has become. But before we get to those American icons, I want to play this clip because this was in San Francisco over the weekend. It was a mob tearing down a statue honoring Francis Scott Key. Francis Scott Key. Yeah, he wrote the Star-Spangled Banner while he was being held by the British during the War of 1812. And they tore down his statue. Let's play this clip. Let's play cut 2.
I hope it crushed somebody.
It didn't. I did look at other camera angles, and it didn't. So there are, we're not going to play it because there was someone who got crushed, and he went to the hospital with his skull fragment sticking out. Not for this statue, but for another one. So people are getting injured in these things. But if you listen to them applauding, like they've accomplished something, tearing down a statue to Francis Scott Key, the man who wrote the lyrics to the Star-Spangled Banner. Joe, what could someone possibly think they accomplished by doing that?
They don't think. They don't think. These are a bunch of little spoiled, un-American dirtbags. That's what they are. You know, I almost want to just give people my address, but I figure one at a time is actually a fair fight. But I'm not going to. But if they want to have a conversation with me, because this is the epitome of what we fought for or fought against for hundreds of years. This entitled little, oh man, I can't even get the words out of how angry it makes me. And this is what happens when you don't study civics. This is what happens, by the way, when you don't spank your kids. This is exactly. And you put them in front of a Nintendo and you tell them that the world is unfair. And you know, this is what happens. This is exactly what happens. A bunch of little punks that decide they're going to destroy history.
There's lots of little examples from around the country of these random statues being targeted. Like in San Francisco and in LA, we saw protesters over the last week tear down statues to a man named Junipero Serra, who is actually a Catholic priest who is now a saint, a Roman Catholic saint. And they tore him down because they didn't like how he treated the indigenous people by converting them to Catholicism. So now they're going after Christian missionaries. But the reason I put up that Francis Scott Key is because what that shows is that the Star-Spangled Banner itself is under attack. If they're willing to tear down that statue, you have to be sure that the Star-Spangled Banner is next. They're already advocating kneeling when the national anthem is played. We're already hearing from the women's national soccer team that they're not going to stand for the national anthem. It's just I wanted to include that because it's so radical that the left is now going after the Star-Spangled Banner. Trump was absolutely right when he said in 2017 that it's a slippery slope. The media made fun of him for it, but now we're seeing it play out right in front of our eyes.
So here, something to consider, and Josh just sent me this. The left is not leading this. They're not that smart. I agree they're not that smart. There are literally people that sit in a back room and try to figure out how they can tear at the fiber of America. They think that's what they think about. I mean, these are people that are foreign actors. These are people that are nuts. And what makes them even more dangerous is the fact that we're not willing to stand up. You know what would have stopped these guys from pulling down the Francis Scott Key statue?
Literally any police officers willing to do their job.
No, 500 patriots. 500 patriots showing up. 500 patriots showing up and beating their little butts. That's what would have stopped it.
So remember we talked about, what was his name? Stephen Baca, the guy in New Mexico. He is no longer being charged with shooting the guy, but he is being charged with pushing someone in front of the statue. Now, we watched that video. We're not going to play it again, but there was no way of telling what happened.
Right.
All we saw was multiple people fell on the ground.
But then the people that beat him, did they beat the other people that beat him with a skateboard? They charge any of those people?
I don't know, but we do know that not only are they charging him with simple assault, but they're also charging him with unlawfully carrying a weapon, because even though he was licensed to carry a firearm, they're getting him with basically bringing a firearm somewhere to cause trouble.
Oh, wow.
So that is how crazy this is. And we saw over the weekend that people are actually starting to be arrested when they're basically sabotaging and spray painting Black Lives Matter signs. If only we had anywhere near that amount of law enforcement at these statues, this would stop. But no, when police officers are there, they're standing and watching. It's really sad. I want to get into this because we don't have a whole lot of time today, but I said that we're going to talk about how every president on Mount Rushmore is now being targeted. And I want to start with Thomas Jefferson. Now, this is a video from Portland, Oregon, of protesters tearing down a statue of Thomas Jefferson. Let's go. Cut through.
They're letting this happen. How could you? How could you let this happen? How could the police, how could our elected leadership, how could anyone on either side of the aisle let any of this happen? How?
Well,
how?
That's the question.
By a bunch of little punks. A bunch of punks that think it's okay to tear up a statue. There's no symbolism in it. There's no symbolism. Tell me what the symbolism is. Oh, you don't like the Constitution?
Well, no, they're saying that he owns slaves. So therefore, he has no right to have a statue, which if that's the standard, every founding father is going to be wiped from the history books. If that's the standard. A few exceptions, because there were some abolitionists even at the founding. But almost every single one will be stricken from the history books. That you can see, they spray painted slave owner on his statue for that very reason.
Right.
It's insane what this has become. But again, you're right. There's no one stopping this. That's on public property. They are destroying public property. If you or I did this to a statue we didn't like, we'd be in jail. Absolutely. If we started tearing it down and then whacking it with a shovel like you saw at the end of that clip, we would be in jail.
100%.
And they'd throw the book at us. But for some reason, because they're leftists, they're given the benefit, they're given wide latitude to get their anger out, to vent their frustrations.
Because they've been so oppressed. They're so oppressed.
Come here.
They don't even know what oppression is. You know, go live in Africa for a little bit and you can see oppression. There's parts of Africa where they just walk into villages and just kill people and rape their kids. And, you know, but there's no police. There's no one to protect them. So you want to get to the point where that's what it's like here? Look what happened in Chaz a couple days ago. Someone was murdered, shot.
Yeah. Shot. And when police and ambulances tried to get to him, they wouldn't let the ambulance through because the ambulance drivers demanded a police escort because they didn't feel safe. So the person died. He was brought to the hospital eventually and pronounced dead. He died because the protesters wouldn't let the police or the ambulance into the Chaz.
So when are we going to stand up to punks? When are we going to finally stand up to the punks? When are we going to finally stand up to all the morons out there that want to destroy our society? When? When is it going to happen? When are we going to wake up to the fact that Democrats are a cancer to every community that they come into? They're a cancer. They're the devil. They're actually the most evil component of our society is the Democrat Party. They are. And you can say whatever you want. Well, I'm a Democrat. Okay. So you stand for this leftist loony crap? Why is it that the top 20 cities in the entire nation, top 30 actually, most dangerous cities in the entire country are run by Democrats, have for decades?
Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking dangerous. I'm talking Chicago, where over 100 people were shot just over the weekend, Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. Yeah. You get shot.
Happy Father's Day.
6 kids of the 14 people, 6 of them were children.
Yeah.
Children.
Yeah.
So, and we can go down to L.A., East L.A. There's places you wouldn't want to go. And everybody wants to say that
Democrats would much rather blame racism or white people for the inner city's problems than even attempt to fix the fact that they're killing themselves.
Denver is run, I'm going to use this example. Denver is run by Democrats. It's run by Democrats. It's a bunch of loony leftist people who don't care about the people they represent. They just spew propaganda and let the media kind of boil it over, right? That's where people are actually, where police brutality is happening, with a Democrat mayor, with a Democrat police force, right? That they're pushing those things down on it, that are abusing their people. That's where it happens, right? But go to the suburbs. Go to a place. We have a thing called Douglas County. It's run by Republicans, right? It's run by conservatives, not just Republicans. There's lots there that are just conservatives. Do you know how many people, Max, in that county, which is one of the biggest, most wealthiest counties, and it has a pretty good diversity to it as well, right? Do you know how many police have actually shot an unarmed black man in that area?
No, I don't know.
Do you know how many cases that they've had of civil rights violations in Douglas County in the last 2 decades?
No.
None.
No idea.
Not one. You want to know why?
Surprise me.
Because it's culture and ethos, and it's good leadership, because the leadership of those areas are run by conservatives. And conservatives feel that everyone has a right to be a good person and to be treated as a good person. Where blacks are treated fairly, Asians are treated fairly, minorities are treated fairly. They're treated just like everyone else. That's what happens when you live in a conservative environment. Yeah. That's what happens. What happens when you get into a place where it's run by the bastion of the devil, right, and run by terrible people, you get Denver. You get Denver, where they spray paint statues and rape and murder and shoot at people and a homeless population of thousands. That's what you get.
Yeah. And listen, so we've talked about, we've hit Thomas Jefferson. We're not done. We're going to be talking about a lot more of these ridiculous statues the mob's targeting. But again, if you want more people to see what the mob is now doing, make sure you hit that share button.
Share.
Because this is insane. Out of all of the past presidents that you think would be immune from being targeted, out of all of the ones that you would think
Abraham
would
Lincoln
not be torn down, you would think it would be Abraham Lincoln, exactly,
100%.
the man who freed the slaves.
Right.
But they're going after him too.
Right.
They're going after him for being racist. I want to play this clip because this is protesters in Madison, Wisconsin, demanding that Abraham Lincoln's statue be torn down, and they're giving the city a deadline, the city and the university a deadline to tear it down. Otherwise, they're going to do it for them. Let's play cut 5.
We don't want action no more. We are action. We bring them to action, and we start with Abraham Lincoln, right up here at the fucking university, where you bring black students who gotta come and see this shit.
The Native American students at UW-Madison been asking for that fucking statue to be taken down for years.
Man, we're heading towards war. We're heading towards war.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Is there?
How do you come back from this? You can't come back from this. What, are they going to just protest every day for the next 10 years? And do what? Blame me for something that someone else did? And blame Abraham Lincoln? Rewrite history? Revisionist history. That's what we're dealing with, revisionist history. Right now.
You hear what she said, that they've been demanding the statue be torn down for years. That it's an insult. The first man who had the megaphone, he said it's an insult to black students who have to be on campus.
Then get off campus.
And that it's an insult to indigenous Native Americans. That the Native Americans should have a right to cancel Abraham Lincoln. It is insane. Now, that's in Madison, Wisconsin. I want to play this because this is footage from a local news affiliate. There is a statue of Abraham Lincoln in Boston, Massachusetts, that's modeled after the official version of the statue in Washington, D.C. And in the statue depicts Abraham Lincoln freeing the slaves. It shows a slave kneeling before Lincoln, and Lincoln basically saying, "You're free. You're no longer a slave." The left has a problem with that one too, and the city of Boston is agreeing to tear down and remove the statue of Abraham Lincoln. Let's play cut 4.
If you've lived in Boston long enough, you've likely walked by this statue in Park Plaza many times, and maybe you knew the historical significance, maybe you didn't. But this is the second time this week that groups in Boston are calling for it to be removed.
I think that this is a pivotal moment.
Tory Bullock is challenging the city and the mayor to take down this statue near Park Plaza. It's called the Freedmen's Monument. It's a replica of the original in Washington, D.C., with President Lincoln standing over a freed slave. The inscription on its base reads, "A race set free," but interpretations of the artwork varies.
It says that it's a statue that's supposed to represent freedom, but to me it represents submissiveness. It represents know your place, because that's where you belong.
You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah. I don't know if the media could have found a dumber person, but the idea of freeing the slaves is submission? No. Like, this is pure ignorance. Absolute ignorance. And saying know your place, well, no, this statue says that your place is among the rest of us, that you are not at second class, third class, you are not slaves, you are freed men. Rise up and join the country as freed men. And he said, no, this is telling us to know our place.
No, what he said is this is what it means to me. And so we can just rename and just redefine everything around us. I have a question for the people that are listening, right? And that will be listening. When is it going to matter? Is it going to wait till it's too late? Are you going to wait till it's too late? That's at your doorstep? That the fight is at your doorstep? When are you going to decide that, all right, I know I got to work 45 hours this week or 50 hours this week. This is all lunacy. Yeah, I'm going to let them just work it out, right? When is it going to be important enough to where you stand up? When you walk down the streets and there's nothing that symbolizes anything about history? Are you going to wait for that? Are you going to wait for foreign interests to take over everything that we do as a country? Are you going to wait for that? Are you going to wait for them to convict you of being a bad person because you don't support the Green New Deal? Or how about the fact that you don't give them free education or free money? Because that's what's next, Max. What's next is I'm going to tear down all this stuff. And by the way, you have to pay for me to go to school. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, they want to take down Thomas Jefferson as the name of the street, and they want to make it Malcolm X Boulevard. This isn't just about erasing history. They want to make it all about the history that they care about, which history is history. We have warts, we have scars. We're not perfect, but to say that we're going to whitewash history is absolutely insane.
Call about what? Sorry, we got a caller. I was just asking. She should have muted me, but he didn't. Max, we got a caller.
Okay.
Let's bring him. Let's bring him on. Let's bring him on. All right, who we got here?
This is Kevin from Chicago.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
Pretty good. I just want to quote the great Teddy Roosevelt, because since his statue got taken down, I feel like this is a good time to quote him. Complaining about a problem without offering a solution is nothing more than whining. And that's all I see from conservatives right now, just whining, whine, without offering any solutions. It's all reactionary. Oh, look at these guys again, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, what are we going to do about it? Supporting Trump, that isn't working, because Trump isn't doing jack diddly. He's monitoring the situation as usual. So this idea that all we're going to do is sit here and whine, and expect our problems to get fixed is not going to work. So
I
think
think
you guys thought on that?
Yeah, Kevin, I think that's what I was just saying. Right before you called. Is that when are we going to do something? I mean, we can't depend on the president. We can't depend on our leadership. Yeah. It's our communities. It's our statue. It's ours. So why are we sitting there watching these little punks destroy everything that our community represents? Yeah. Good and bad. There's good things and bad things, right? There's a prison in cities all over America. There's prisons. You got to tear it down because for what? Because of what it represents? Because there was somebody that was innocent that actually went to prison? When does it stop where we as a society don't say, no, do it again, and we're gonna drag you away from the statue? When does that happen?
Well, Josh, throw up image number 1. So the Teddy Roosevelt statue is being removed from a museum in New York City.
Yeah.
The city of New York is removing it. Trump is saying ridiculous, don't do it. And I get that a lot of times Trump says stuff and it isn't necessarily followed up with action, but the President of the United States doesn't have any legal authority to stop the city from removing a statue on its own property. So we can talk about what Trump should be doing, but in that particular case, it's tough to expect the president to fix it. We all need to stand up for it, right? And it's hard when the mob is at these statues, and we've seen how people are attacked just for standing up for history. But you're right. We can't talk about it. We have to do something about it.
Yeah, but Trump, that's just one example. He hasn't delivered any of his promises. Build the wall. The wall's not built. Social media.
It's over 200 miles of wall are built, and he had to do it on his own by executive order because Republicans and Democrats stabbed him in the back. He had to declare national emergency.
He failed to deliver on his promise. He failed to deliver on his promise. And this is just one example after the other. I mean, people still supporting Trump. He's in the pocket of Sheldon Adelson, a Zionist billionaire. He's not looking out for the people. He's looking out for his donor class like Sheldon Adelson and the rest of his Zionist billionaire buddies. That's why I put people like freaking
Thank you for your call.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but we're going to cut anyone off once they start getting into Zionists.
Well,
thank you for your call, though.
Look, I think that everyone has people that support them, right? And I'm unapologetically going to tell you I support President Trump, unapologetically. And why? Well, I don't know. You have the SAFE Act. You have the millions of jobs that he's creating for minority communities. You have the reset that he made with China, so they could stop bilking the American people out of billions of dollars.
Listen, we're not gonna change this whole episode because we had one person call in and demand that we defend what Trump did. He said that Trump should be doing more to stop Teddy Roosevelt from being taken down. Anything Trump can do, he should do it. But ultimately, it's city property in front of a natural history museum. I mean, what's crazy is that this Teddy Roosevelt statue is in front of the Natural History Museum. That's the statue that basically is from Night at the Museum, right? With Robin Williams playing Teddy Roosevelt. They're taking down the statue of Teddy Roosevelt. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, no, they're going after everyone. I want to play this, Joe, because this is one of your own people from Colorado, Jason Crow, on CNN talking about why the Roosevelt statue needs to be taken down. Let's play cut 8.
The Natural History Museum on Central Park West, the city has announced that they are going to remove that. Now, they're not wiping Teddy Roosevelt from the museum. It's that specific statue, which happens to have an African man and a Native American sort of subjugated walking behind him there. That's why they say they're removing it. But what's your feeling in general about something like that? If you're removing names of Confederate generals is one thing, but if you're removing statues of Teddy Roosevelt, what does that say?
Well, that specific statue, you're right. It does portray a subjugation of Native Americans and African Americans, and it's not an appropriate statue. What we need to do is have a conversation as a country. We need to have a conversation and go through a process where we have to come to terms with some of our monuments, our statues, the names of our streets, the names of our bases, and what's appropriate for our values. And actually having that conversation, going through that process is really important. It'll allow us to educate ourselves on our history, educate ourselves on the complicated course that our history has gone through. We need to go through that process and have that discussion. That discussion is valuable, but the results of that will also be valuable.
He literally said nothing about nothing about nothing. And why, again, are we giving CNN even 1 minute of time? I just want to know that. CNN is like the worst network in the world.
Well, no, we had to show Jason Crow, who's a congressman from Colorado, your neck of the woods, commenting on a statue in New York City. It's ludicrous, but they're saying that this is presenting Native Americans and black people as being submissive. I don't see that at all. I see them standing alongside of Teddy Roosevelt. And when you look at the history, and you know that Teddy Roosevelt is the first president to invite a black man to the White House for dinner, the whole argument becomes ridiculous. It becomes absurd. They're trying to rewrite history to make Teddy Roosevelt to be this racist when he was anything but.
Oh, everyone's a racist. Everyone's a racist.
Yeah.
It's just a new thing. Racist, 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 racist. It's just crazy. The whole thing's crazy.
But they want.
But I think we have to get to the point, by the way, that we just stop and we just call it what it is and have enough courage to tell these kids to go home and get a job, right? Contribute to society or get your teeth kicked in. And yeah, are you advocating for violence? I'm advocating for accountability, consequences. You don't get to tear apart our communities. You don't get to, turn it into another hole in the wall like everything else that conservatives and these loony liberals actually stand for. Democrats and these loony liberals actually stand for. Everything that they touch turns to nothing. It degrades and erodes everything. Everything that they lead turns to nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
So Josh, throw up image number 2 again, and we'll show this. This is Mount Rushmore. So we've gone down the list. We've shown Thomas Jefferson. They're going after him. They're going after Abraham Lincoln, his statues, because apparently the man who freed the slaves is now a racist. And they're going after Teddy Roosevelt, one of the most badass presidents. Again, the first president to invite a black man to the White House for dinner. Going after him. Now, as you'll see, they are also going after George Washington. Here is a video from Portland, Oregon, of the aftermath after an angry mob toppled a statue of George Washington. Let's go to cut 6. So lots of different things. Spray painted white fragility, land back, no good cops, Black Lives Matter. 1619 is spray painted. That's the New York Times 1619 project, which is basically trying to rewrite history and present an unbalanced one-side account and leave most of the history out to push this leftist agenda. And it's now being forced into the history books in schools. They're toppling statues of George Washington. And before we keep talking about this, I want to play this clip because that was the aftermath, the morning after. I want to play this because this is what it looked like the night before. Let's play cut 7.
Unbelievable.
So not only did they topple the statue, but then they burned an American flag on top of it. So they're going against Francis Scott Key. They're going against all of the founders. They're going against Teddy Roosevelt. They're going against Abraham Lincoln. They're going against the flag itself. This is the ultimate slippery slope. It's not a slippery slope. We're on the slide, and we're approaching the bottom. And again, we're seeing Republicans cave to the left's demands with now saying, okay, well, you know what we also need to do? We need to rename our military bases. You know what we also need to do? We need to remove Confederates from the Capitol building. I mean, we talked about it before, but one of the actual speakers of the House that Nancy Pelosi had his painting removed, he made the mistake of joining the Confederate Army when he was 16. And then he became Speaker of the House in the late 1800s, long after the Civil War. He had his speaker portrait taken down because he joined the Confederate Army as a teenager. This is getting insane. And if we don't push back on this, Republicans and Democrats, because the Republicans are just as spineless as the Democrats are scheming, it will not end. They will not stop until every single example of Americana is torn down. Because when you see what they're spray painting land back. That's a mention to the fact that they don't believe the United States should exist. They believe that we're illegally on native land, Native American land, right? You see all these indigenous slogans being spray painted. It's the belief that we need to give the land back. They don't even believe America should exist. You will never be able to appease these radicals.
Yeah, so if we don't, as the American people, and I was just reading, somebody sent me an email, and they were walking through why they're going to vote for Biden, and I couldn't make sense of anything that they said because, frankly, if anyone were to vote for Biden, you'd have to give me some reasons, and everything they did was just rambling. And I guess, Max, that's where we're at. We're at the point where artistic value meets opinion meets, oh, that sounds good. Yeah, let's support that.
Yeah.
I think that I could probably say the Jolly Green Giant is real and everyone needs to follow the Jolly Green Giant. And we're headed right now to go meet the Jolly Green Giant who's going to save America. And I could convince 100 people to go with me to go meet the Jolly Green Giant. I think I could. And part of it is we have a drug problem. The second of which is we have an education problem. The third of which is we have a discipline problem. I mean, I can tell you what the problems are. You know where those problems don't exist typically? In conservative households. That's where they don't exist. You want to know why? Because in conservative households, you get punished for bad behavior. You get consequences for bad behavior. You have to pay the consequences, and you got to go to school, and you can't do drugs, right? These are just things you can't do. They're being taught about ethical and moral virtue. They're being taught about virtue. You know what happens in these bastions of crime that are riddled with crime in cities all over the country? Yeah, no accountability, none. They're all run by a bunch of little punks. Yeah, I'm just...
Yeah, no, we saw in the last week that there are now school districts that are banning The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, written by Mark Twain, because it includes what they say is racist language. So now no one's going to read Huck Finn because that's too racist. Listen, in the 1930s, the German government, the Nazi government in Germany and Austria burned books. It's very famous, the German book burning. And a lot of people think it was just Jewish books. And yeah, they burned books written by Jewish authors, but they also banned any book that they determined to be written by a pacifist, someone of faith, a liberal, an anarchist, a socialist, a communist, or even a sexologist. They were banning any type of scholarly research or any book that went against their narrative. What we are seeing today is a modern day book burning. That is what we are seeing. And the fact that the Republicans are bowing down to this nonsense is unbelievable. The fact that we are not, listen, it's the same with how they went after Alex Jones when they deplatformed him.
Right.
You had conservatives saying, wow, that's wrong. But the mainstream media said, you know what, there's nothing wrong because Alex Jones is a radical. And regardless of whether you agree with he is or not, it didn't take long for them to start going after other conservative outlets.
Because it's a slippery slope. I actually think that we should be having class action lawsuits. We should be class action lawsuiting all the big companies. We should get all conservative Americans together and say we've had enough, right? We should charge people who destroy our society. We should charge them. We should go after them. And I mean, if we really want to do something, number one, start paying attention and showing up. If the only people that show up are a bunch of little punks that want to destroy everything, well, obviously they're going to get away with destroying everything. But if we actually go out there and we go head to head with them, I don't know if you saw the video of conservative patriots coming up against anarchists. It did not end well for the anarchists. It did not. You want to know why? Because patriots work really hard. They have calluses on their hands from working. Regardless of the job that they have calluses on their hand. They stand for the freedom that we stand for as a country. And so going up against a bunch of little punks that sat behind a little computer and played, Call of Duty and all these other games that they want to play, they're no match for Americans. We just got to reset what we're asking from our society, asking from our kids. We got to reset it. We got to let them know where the line is and never let them cross it. But we keep letting them cross that line. We keep letting them take more from us. And the government takes more already. They say, hey, we're going to raise your taxes by 0.25% because we need to pay for roads. Well, weren't you paying for roads before? Oh, yeah, but we need more roads. Okay. And now you turn our roads into tollways. So you pay for roads, and now that on top of paying for roads, you got to pay for tolls. I mean, look, this radical, loony agenda on the left has no end until it takes everything from you. And all that will be left when we finally stand at that last door will be the elite that pushed us in this corner and a lot of poor people trying to figure out why we were fighting over race to begin with. Saying, oh, well, that was kind of stupid. What did that stand for again? I don't really understand what it stood for. I don't remember. Oh, that's right. They never taught me that in school because civics is dead. And now biology obviously is dead.
Listen, Teddy Roosevelt famously tamed the wilderness. George Washington was a land surveyor at the age of 17. Right? Abraham Lincoln taught himself by candlelight how to be a lawyer. Didn't go to law school. He read the law by candlelight in a log cabin and became a lawyer. Right? They're going after these people when these snowflakes have never had more information available to them. Can you imagine what George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt would have been able to accomplish with the internet, with cross-country travel by train, by airplane, by car? Can you imagine what these great men would have been able to accomplish if they didn't have to read by candlelight, they didn't have to send telegrams, they didn't have to send messengers to carry messages by hand across the country? They tamed the wilderness. They made this country with basically their sweat, blood, and tears. And what we have now is we have a generation of snowflakes who have never had more potential. They can, in the palm of their hand, they have the entire collection of human knowledge in the palm of their hand. There is nothing unknowable to them. They can learn anything they want. They can access any bit of information they want. Their potential is limitless. Yet instead of actually building something, instead of making a name for themselves, they just want to tear down. They want to tear down the monuments of men who did much more than they ever will with much, much less. And that, I think, is the overarching narrative to this, because I have yet to see anyone at these protests who works for a living. I see a lot of professional students.
Right.
I see a lot of professional anarchists. I don't see a lot of men in suits and business attire tearing down monuments. I just don't see it. I see a lot of students who think that what they're being taught in the classrooms is how the real world works. Well, no, if you're going to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to be brainwashed, you need to know that stops when you enter society. But they're trying to rework our society in the image of what their professors are teaching them.
Right.
It's again,
because they
I've
attacked our education system. They attacked our government. We have our government just filled with literally loony leftists, right? It's a cancer. Look, the Democratic Party is a cancer. It is a cancer to our society. It is a cancer to our communities. It is a cancer to everything that we stand for as Americans. They're a cancer. They don't love America. They hate America. They don't want America to thrive. They want it to fail. That's what they represent. And that's what we're letting it happen. We're letting these people actually get away with it because we're not willing to have the courage to stand up. You know when it's going to happen? One of these days it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I promise you this is going to happen. I promise you. And it's not that far off. We're going to get people that start standing up, right? And just saying, look, I've had enough. And when they do, it's going to be, these people are not, it's going to be a wave that they've never seen before because you're going to have 500 of them show up. You know, 500 of them to show up. And just like they were told to stand down at the Chaz, they're going to show up to the Chaz and they're literally going to drag all those little punks out, right? And then a shot's going to be fired. And then you know what's going to happen to those people that shoot? They're all going to meet their end because people are seeing this as a war, Max. They're seeing this as a war on everything we stand for as a country.
Well, something has to give because we are the frog in the pot of boiling water.
Right.
And every time they demand that we take down a Confederate statue or Stonewall Jackson or something like that, they increase the temperature a little bit. And we say, okay, that's fine, it's just a little bit hotter. If we don't do something about this now, before we know it, and not too much longer, the pot will be boiling. And we, the frog, will be dead. Our history, our collective history, what it means to be America will be dead because all of the monuments that we erect to honor the people that brought us to this point, warts and all, they're not perfect. They're imperfect men, but those imperfect men created the best experiment of representative government that this world has ever seen. And we honor them, not to prop them up on a pedestal that they're perfect, but because imperfect men can create near-perfect systems of government. They will be wiped from the history books. They will be removed. And if we don't do something soon, it'll be too late because they'll already be taken down. I want to mention that this podcast is being brought to you today by the Conservative Daily Store. And again, I want to promote this because we're selling a ton of these. The I Back Blue T-shirts. This one's a little bit more expensive. It's $34. You can get one for around $21, but I like this one because the flag is bigger. There's a bigger print area. So definitely check that out. It's the link is in the description of our YouTube and our Facebook live streams. Definitely check that out if you want to help support the channel. Back Blue. Buy the shirt, wear it, and show that you support law enforcement. Any final words, Joe, as we wrap up this podcast?
Courage. Have courage. Stand up. Take a stand. Oh, I don't want to sacrifice anything. I don't want to sacrifice anything in my life. Why would I want to be uncomfortable? I'll just let them all figure it out. If figuring it out is tearing down national monuments and statues and of people that literally sacrifice much more than these little punks did, right? That, by the way, had to go get their soy latte, these little soy boys, right? If you want to take all of that out of your society, what is left? What is left?
Yeah.
So if you don't have courage and if you don't stand up, I don't care if you're a woman or a man, at some point you got to start speaking. Speak.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah. Don't be afraid. So yeah, that's going to be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. Make sure, if you haven't already, hit that share button. More people need to see what the left is doing. More people need to see how radical this mob has become. So definitely hit that share button if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook. Again, that's going to be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. Remember that you can download the podcast on the Apple Podcast if you have an iPhone, or the Google Play Store if you have an Android phone. You can also find us on the Podbean app, as well as conservative-daily.com/podcast. You can find us on our Facebook page, which is in the description of this live stream, as well as our YouTube channel. Definitely make sure you go there and subscribe. So again, my name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Otto.
And remember that the fight to take back our country is not over, but the only way we win is if we all fight together.